Shawn Garrett, thank you so much for joining me on Cook's Table podcast today. It's really a pleasure to have you. You're my first lawyer on the podcast. So,
Oh
uh,
boy.
met you. There's this anticipation of getting to talk to someone in your industry and your field, especially with your focus on business. And so excited to have you share some wisdom with my audience and the next generation. So, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I guess what I typically have my guests do is just give a quick introduction of who you are, and maybe a brief description of kind of your journey to get to this point and what you currently are up to.
Yeah. Undergrad was in business. Learned in undergrad that I really wanted to go to law school. I worked at a bank and I saw the business bankers coming in and out with the attorneys. And I just said, the attorneys commanded respect. I want to be one of those guys. And so got to know them, learned about the legal profession, didn't grow up with any attorneys or business owners in my life. Yeah, that was my kickoff into law. Went to law school right after undergrad. And in law school, learned a lot that I learned a lot about what I didn't know. And I'm not saying I learned what I didn't know. I learned the fact that I didn't know a lot.
Right,
so,
right.
from there, I basically earned the ability to practice law from my law degree and my passing of the bar. And I call it the ability to practice law because you learn how to practice law. You don't know much when you get out of law school. And so from there, I just dove headfirst into how do I become a good lawyer? And that's been the journey that I've been on for the last 10 years. So I graduated
Yeah.
in 16 and this is year 10 of practice. So
Wow. And then you were at several practices as an employee before you started out on your own with your own firm. Is that correct?
yeah, so I worked for one smaller firm in the Chicago suburbs, and then they did some business law, some estate planning, some real estate. That's pretty general of a smaller law firm. And then I worked for a larger firm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where my focus was more on the business side of real estate, and so worked with a number of institutional investors and just other investors in the real estate space. And then started my own practice focusing much more on the business law side of things. We still do some real estate transactions, but much more business focused, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So take me back to that moment when you decided, hey, I think it's time to go out on my own. Was that something that you had aspired to from day one of your legal career, or was there a precipitating event, or what did that look like?
Man, I will be honest with you, Andrew. That's a tough question to answer, but I think I knew from the day I started undergrad that I was going to start a business.
Cool.
Um, I saw the business undergrad opportunity as, getting a degree that I never intended to sit in interviews and try to compete for a job at a big firm or with an investment bank or anything like that. I really wanted to go out and be an entrepreneur. And so when I learned about being an attorney, I learned you have to know how to practice law before you could sell that as a business, before you could sell legal services as a business. And so I felt like for the first 5 years of my business, my practice of law, I learned how to be an attorney.
Mhm.
Still a long way to go. But then from there, I felt comfortable enough to sell those services to clients.
Sure, sure. Yeah. What do you think about when you think about your entrepreneurial drive and even that desire that you mentioned, which was, like, so, oh, you were aware of it from an early stage going into undergrad. Do you think that is nature for you or more nurture? What was your take on that, having grown up?
In terms of so nature and nurture personally or from the outside in?
I guess personally, what's your take? Like, I'm always curious to hear maybe your family background and were your parents entrepreneurs? Did you get some of that from them, or do you think it's just kind of like your nature and wiring?
100% my own wiring.
Okay.
My mom's been corporate my whole life, from Fortune 500 companies to now I think she's with a Fortune 10 company, just huge corporations. Dad has always been, dad's a pastor and a nurse practitioner. So he's always been either very, churches are typically smaller organizations, and then hospitals, of course, are larger. But no one in my family was an attorney. No one in my family owned a business, and so a lot of that was just me seeing entrepreneurship and saying, "Oh, it's pretty easy. You go cut the grass and you get money for it. Why not?
Sure.
Why doesn't everyone do this?" You know?
Yeah.
So
Did you have early entrepreneurial ventures before you went to college at all?
yeah. It started. My very first entrepreneurial venture was selling water to my parents.
Okay.
I know it sounds kind of crazy, but they called it Sean's Special Water, and I would get ice and water, and they would pay me $1 for it. And looking back, they just didn't want to get up from the couch or table or wherever they were sitting, and so I was really selling convenience to them.
Wow.
But yeah, that was the first venture, and then from there, it's just been entrepreneurial endeavor after entrepreneurial endeavor. So
Mm, mm. What was your favorite one growing up? If you had multiple kind of in the growing up years.
yeah, I would say so. I'm a big car guy, and in undergrad, I got into buying and selling cars a bit. Not saying I was selling them for a ton of profit, but I think I just really got into the resale of items
Sure.
stuff. If you go to the store and you buy something that there's a high demand for and there's a low supply and you can resell that, that's kind of what I was into. And so I started out with cars. I bought a car and I remember I sold it. I made some profit on it and I was like, wow, that's awesome. So then doing research into, well, what does the market want? What is high demand, low supply, and then really just diving into that, trying to provide that to people. Um, and I still do that, truthfully. That's just a hobby. It's just fun. My kids and I are now into Pokemon cards. And
Okay.
so, kind of goofy, but you pull a card and we actually my son and I pulled a card on Easter. We sent it in and total investment was $20 and now it's worth 350. So,
Wow. Wow.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at. And I'm trying to instill some of that in him too. So
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you were tapping into the sales muscle from an early age, and that I feel like that's like the base level skill you need to be an effective business owner, entrepreneur. You have to be able to sell something, convince somebody of, the value of what you're producing. What would you say is your biggest um, I don't know, sales advice that you'd give to the next generation?
sales advice. I would say I had to learn early on that no one knows what the heck you're talking about. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? Um, I would go when I first started my firm, I would go to network with people and they'd say, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a corporate lawyer and I do this and it's so cool and everyone knows and understands what I do." And then I'd see them a month later and they'd be like, "Hey, so what is it you do again?" And I'd be
yeah.
like, "You don't remember? I'm the big corporate lawyer. I'm the guy, I do contracts and drafting and M&A and A and all this cool stuff." And then I see them a third time and they're like, "Remind me what it is that you do." So eventually, Andrew, I just said, "I'm a lawyer for businesses." And they're
Yeah.
like, "What do you do?" Specifically, I'm like, "That's not important. I'm a lawyer for businesses. If a business has contracts they need drafting, or if they want to buy or sell a business, come to me." And so next time I'd see them. They'd be like, "Hey, this is Shawn. He's a lawyer for businesses."
Yeah.
And it was like, "Hey, perfect. You get it." And so, in my head, it sounded so smart and it made me feel like I was smart.
Sure.
But if no one knows what you do, no one's going to remember. And
That's good.
so I just simplified
Mm,
my sales approach so much just to make it short, easy, simple. So if you look at our signature in our email or on our website, it says Garrett PLLC, a law firm serving businesses.
mm.
Simple. That's what we do.
Love that. That's so cool. What about starting your own business and running your own business, entrepreneurship, if you will? What about that appeals to you the most these days?
Freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% freedom. A lot of people do it for money. That's the wrong way to do it.
Mm,
Or that's the wrong reason to do it.
sure.
I love being able to work from the beach. I love being able to take my son to Pokemon camp this week and pick
Yep.
him up. I love the flexibility of being able to say yes or no to deals or transactions that I want to work on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. When you think about your hardwiring and kind of the unique gifts that you bring to the table with your career, what things of that would you say make you an effective entrepreneur? What are your best skills and gifts and talents that you bring to the table as an entrepreneur that makes you really successful? And
I'd
I
listen.
guess it's obviously a learning process too. I want to acknowledge that, like maybe there's just lessons you're learning along the way that you would
No,
share.
you're absolutely correct. The reason I think people keep coming back to us is because I listen. I pick up the
Mm,
phone. I think it's easy for lawyers to get their ideal client, and if anyone falls outside of that, they're just not interested.
mhm,
Um, I was telling a client earlier today, we were talking, we had lunch, and I still pick up the phone for everyone. It could be a client that just wants an LLC filed for $500. That's probably not going to keep our lights on. They still get the same time and attention as someone who has a, M&A transaction that's going to be paying us a lot of money to keep our lights on for a long time.
right.
So I would say people can sense when you're genuine.
Yeah.
And I want to continue offering that through the firm and continue being genuine. So,
hmm hmm That's good. Yeah. Cool. When you think about the journey so far of starting your own firm, what advice from peers, books, consultants, these types of things has meant the most to you? Where would you point people in terms of resources that have been your favorites as a business owner?
mm, I will be honest with you. I got so spent on self-help business books, I just stopped reading them.
Hey,
I was
under,
spent.
understood.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna dog on the guy, but Ryan Serhant, he has great books. But I remember one time I was listening to his book and he said the customer's always right. And I stopped it. I said, no, it's not true. The customer's not
Mm,
always right, especially in my industry.
sure.
Because I have to tell clients often, here are our chances of success, and this is what's realistic, and this is what isn't. And so I learned that every industry is a little bit different. And so man, mentors are just big.
Yeah.
I've got a number of mentors, people that I rely on, just for support and just, hey, what do you think about this? How does this sound? Let me run this past you. I think mentorship is huge. So
If you think about the mentors that have meant the most in your life, and you were talking to a young person out there who was aspiring to this and wanting to move forward and get some mentors in their life, what would you tell them about what it takes to get mentors around you? How do you do that?
it is tough. I've been asked that question before.
Okay.
My favorite mentor is my dad. There's not much he or I could have done. That's just it is what it is. He's my favorite
Yeah.
mentor. Um, And some of the other mentors that are important to me, I'll tell you a story about how I met another mentor. I was on Reddit looking for, just some support in what do I do with my career? How do I move forward? How do I make this jump to entrepreneurship? And I met this lawyer through Reddit, and him and I have been working on deals together, grabbing coffee for years now.
Wow.
And here's the thing with Reddit, he could be anywhere in the world. It could have been in Asia, Russia. He happened to be in Matthews, North Carolina.
Wow.
and
Wow.
so and
Yeah.
so him and I sent him a random message and said, "Hey, I don't know where you're at. Would you be up for a virtual meeting?" He goes, "Yeah, I'd love a virtual meeting. And if you're ever in Charlotte, let me know." And I'm like, "Well, just so happens I'm here. So let's meet in person." And so again, that was a chance meeting. But I think it's just kind of sticking your neck out, putting into the relationship more than you're anticipating getting out of it, which
Yeah.
doesn't always seem realistic in the beginning, but sometimes just time and availability is what people look for. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's one I haven't heard is a Reddit meeting.
it
Like
it was a
LinkedIn feels
chance
like a
meeting.
stretch sometimes, but Reddit,
You know, yeah,
impossible.
yeah, yeah. Him and I were on the phone yesterday together, and I met him in 2020, 2020, 2021. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh,
So
that's wild. That is a new one. That's great. What a
yeah.
story. What a story. If you thought about yourself back in at the beginning of undergrad, and you thought about a group of aspiring entrepreneurs like yourself at that stage of life,
Mhm.
I know you've already given some great advice on sales or finding a mentor or whatever, even so far in this podcast. But what else would you talk about if you had 30 minutes to talk to a group of students like that? What else would you harp on in that time?
Yeah, I'm glad you circled back to that question because I did think through, not only knowing what your business model is, but also who are you selling to? Having your target avatar. I would say just understanding your product is so big. I create
Mm,
so many LLCs and operating agreements for people who I remember I created this LLC for a lady, and a year later she came back and she's like, "The business isn't profitable." And I said, "Well, what are you doing?" She's like, I tell me your business. What are you selling?" Well, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. Well, the business isn't going to be profitable. If you don't know what you're selling, no
Right.
one else is going to know what they're buying, and no one's going to spend their hard-earned money on it. So I would say understanding what it is that you're selling and keep it super simple. People try to offer everything to everyone,
Mm.
but people are much more willing to recommend you if they know it exactly what it is that you're looking for, or exactly what it is that you offer. Um, another story, Andrew. When I graduated from law school, again, not the apply to a big firm, put in my resume and hope they call me kind of guy. So I bought a suit and I was walking door to door from businesses handing out my resume in
Hmm.
this town in the Chicago suburbs, which St. Charles, Illinois, St. Charles,
Sure.
Geneva. I'm walking door to door in Geneva. And I remember I walked into this bank in Geneva and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." And they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be the lawyer." And they
Yeah.
were like, "What?" So then they grabbed the CEO and him and I sat down and we talked for a while. And he goes, "Well, we have lawyers." And he's like, "Are you a lawyer yet?" I'm like, "No, I'm graduating from law school. I haven't passed the bar yet." He's like, "Well, this is all too premature, dude." And I said, "Yes, I agree, but I'm getting a jump start on things." So he said, "I'm going to take your application. I'm going to give it out to other business owners that I know, and hopefully that works." And so one of the business owners he told me he was going to give my resume to, again, not being too patient of a person, I went to that business and I walked in and I said, "I'm looking for a job." And she said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I want to be your lawyer." And she goes, "Okay, I'm not too sure about that, but and as I'm pulling around, this guy in a suit's running after my car, and he was a lawyer for the company. And I stopped and he said, "Get in here." And I walked in and he's like, "Who are you?" I told him. He said, "What do you want?" I told him. He said, "I like you. You're hired." And so I got a job right on the spot.
Wha-
And so that was pre, me passing the bar. And so I got some experience from him and to kind of jumpstart my legal career. But yeah, that was just me going door to door. And that was the, story of how Sean found his first job. So
Wow. Wow. I mean, I that's there's nobody who does that, I feel like. What compelled you to go door to door, like literally walking door to door in all these businesses in St. Charles?
why wait? You know what I mean? There are people out there that have a need. They don't have the time to go find it or fill it. And so if the need comes to them or that the need is presented to them and they have a use for it, so be it. Um, what's interesting is I don't believe that there's a bad connection. I don't believe there's a bad relationship, which is why we still take all the meetings we can.
Sure.
Um, I do think that helped people get to know me in the community. I don't think I came off as desperate. I came off as I'm graduating. I need a job. And if you guys have one, so be it. I won Young Professional of the Year with the St. Charles Chamber of Commerce years later. And so, I think it was just me being willing and open to be in the community and just connecting.
Well,
So yeah.
wow. What would you give as advice to when you're cold approaching like that? Guy, it's not cold calling. You're literally, I guess, going to these businesses. So it's more of just like a cold, I don't know, like cold meeting. What advice, what did you learn through that process about yourself or, like how to do that in the best way possible? Obviously you were successful. So that last one worked.
Yeah.
But what else did you take away from that you're now applying later in life?
What's so funny? I remember the difference between me walking into those businesses. I know I sound like I had it all together. I did not.
Sure.
When I walked in there, I'm saying know what you're selling and know what you're offering. I didn't know what I was selling. I didn't know what I was offering. I probably could have
Yeah.
found a job quicker had I known that. But I would sit down and I'd say, "I need a job." And I just stare at them. And I'm like, and they're like, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm going to be a lawyer." And they're like, "So you're not a lawyer now?" "Nope." I don't know what to tell you. And so through that process, I felt like I kind of honed my pitch to
Sure.
the point where I was like, I want to support lawyers until I pass the bar, and then I'd love to have an offer post bar passage.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I took a lot of rejection.
Hmm.
Just took it on the chin, and I've learned, not everyone is for everyone. That's one of my favorite sayings because not every client is for Shawn.
Hmm.
I had a client months ago, probably like 9 months ago, that sent me a client, teed it up. She thought that this was a great relationship. I met with the potential client. We met together. I thought it was an okay call. She decided not to go with me. The referral source was hurt and wanted to know why it didn't work. And we kind of went through it, and I pitched a theory on my end that I just probably wasn't the right lawyer for her. And I think she said, okay, I get it. And it's no harm for me. It's no skin off my back. You know, at the end of the day, there are clients for everyone. There are attorneys for everyone. Sometimes I'm just not the lawyer for that person. So
Sure. Sure. Wow. Yeah, that's what a story. And yeah, just I feel like encouraging people to step out there and ask for what they want and to put themselves out there like that is so important, and more people need to do it. I think people are just very shocked when that happens.
yeah.
I forgot my first job in college as a non CPA, similar to you, not by going and talking to them directly, but by going to my accounting department. And asking them, do you know any firms in the town that I was in that are hiring or need somebody? I'll take out the trash if I need to. Like
Mm,
I will literally be the janitor for them if I need to. I just want to be working in an accounting firm. And they gave me a couple of emails. I cold emailed them and ended up with a job, which was certainly a gift, and in hindsight, just favor on my life in so many ways. But didn't
that's
come
awesome.
without what you just said and what you just shared, the same kind of cold approach, boldness and courage. And I'm hearing like the importance of niche, or the importance of not necessarily niche, I guess, but clarity with your offer. Because like
Hmm.
your offer has to be so clear.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah, that's great. Anything else you would add there on that last question about the young Shawn undergrad type of person? You gave some great advice. I loved that.
Yeah, no, I think that's it.
Okay,
I've changed a lot as a person. I've learned so much. That drive is still there. Um, but yeah, that's
that's amazing.
I think
That's
that's it. So
That's great. Well, let's transition a little bit to the legal side of things, what your specialty is, and kind of the business of law and uh, the law that goes into business, both sides of that. What do you wish more business owners knew about what you do as a business lawyer?
yeah, yeah. I wish business owners knew that, and this is gonna get probably superficial, but how a law firm works. When it comes to a law firm, you send a request, and it's my time specifically spent doing whatever the task is.
Hmm.
Unfortunately for my clients, we have a lot of them. And so if I have 5 clients that come to me and ask for a task, I can only do one at a time. And so I think, and what we are working on internally is prioritizing and communicating better, letting clients know when they can expect their job to be completed. Um, there's a lot of work for us to do there too. But sometimes, I had a client last week who emailed me at 9 o'clock at night and said, I'd love to have this by the morning. And I just said, no. Like, what do you expect, man? It's 9 o'clock.
Right,
I don't
right.
know what to tell you.
Yeah,
So I would say setting expectations is key, and not being afraid to set expectations is key. So,
sure. Makes sense. Yeah, no, it makes sense. Um, what are the most common mistakes business owners make when dealing with legal issues in their business? What do you see most often?
mistakes. It always has to do with co-owners. Always has to do with co-owners. Don't give away equity too quickly,
Mm.
and when you do, document it properly. So,
Do you have any horror stories with that come to mind off the top of your head of times where people have done it wrong and you've been able to help them fix it? Or
yeah, man, we're in 4 or 5 disputes right now where, my client, out of the generosity of their heart, gave equity to someone, and now they're being sued. to
Mm,
force a buyout, just nasty stuff. And so I would say protect your equity. I know in the early stages you need help, and the first thing you can get rid of is equity instead of cash. But down the road, that cash is going to be nothing compared to what the value of the equity is, and the
mhm.
value of a lawsuit with people who are, you know, trying to take it from you. So
Yeah. How does that work, particularly as you've worked with businesses that are struggling with those problems, informed your own view of partnership? And how would you counsel people just in general with partnership? I imagine you have such a unique view into that conversation, you know?
yeah, I would say I like giving runways. So let's say you did give equity, and let's say, it's free equity. I would love a universal right to rebuy that person's equity for, I don't know, 50% value, unilateral right, meaning that my client can exercise it at any point in time, or whoever's giving the equity could exercise it whenever they want for a year or two.
Sure.
Just make it super clean. If this isn't working, rip off the band-aid. Because once you sign the papers, you got to get a valuation and buy them out.
Wow. That's makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's crazy. You can actually, I mean, I guess you can pretty much do anything if you write it down correctly. But I hadn't thought about that, it's almost like a, you know, you get the benefits of both kind of employee employer relationship
Yep.
for a couple of years, and they get the benefit of some equity and that promise of that kind of vesting, if you will, at a certain given future date.
Yep.
Um, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say get creative with structuring. We get creative all the time.
Mhm.
I just hate seeing clients give away equity, and then next thing you know, it's time to rebuy it, and it's just they have rights. Clients have rights, or not clients, but co-owners have rights, and do you always want to give those rights and put them in place right away? No, let's date a little bit and see what works. So
Mm, that's good. That's good. If you were sitting down with a random business owner, they were coming to you for services, they were just wanting to make sure that their business was set up correctly and things were looking right from a legal perspective. I know that industry is probably really important with that, and there's differences between industries and that type of thing. But what are three of your most important kind of diagnostic questions that you would ask if they're set up right, if they're using the best practices from a legal perspective?
yeah. So I would generally ask, one, how much do you have documented? You know, two, how frequently are you meeting with your co-owners, your managers, your employees? What's that meeting cadence like? How well is communication taking place inside the firm
Mm,
or the organization? And then third, I would say, what does cash flow and revenue look like? So I would say, making sure you're making money is number one. I tell clients that all the time. Make money, please. Go make money. Because if you're not making money, none of this matters.
right.
But then from there, make sure communication top to bottom is transparent, because once communication falls, there's not much you can do to really pick that back up. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. What are some best practices around communication that you would give? That's a huge nugget, I think, for people who are in. It sounds like you're referring to not just business partners, but even within the business as a whole. From top to bottom, the managers, the employees, everything like that. Would you have anything to add on the communication piece? For uh, doing it the best way possible within a business.
Yeah, I would say be open and honest. Don't beat around the bush. Document everything.
Hmm.
If you feel a certain way about it, if you think you said it, you didn't say it. So make sure you're being transparent about how you're communicating direction, votes, things of that nature, and then document it so that there's no question down the road. Everyone wants to rely on AI and recordings, and they're not perfect. So I would, at the end of the meeting, summarize it into an email and send it over, and just make sure that is what the parties agreed to.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. I've heard you mention already that your firm and you as an individual business owner, really prioritize the listening to clients as part of what makes your firm unique, what makes you unique as an owner. What else would you highlight that makes your firm and your approach to law different from other law firms out there that you might compete with?
Cost, we're cheaper.
Okay.
right off the bat. And then two, communication is big. All law firms do the same thing, really. We draft contracts, we negotiate. Um, Maybe there's a lawyer who's done it longer, and so they've seen more, which experience is key in the legal industry. But at the end of the day, the playing field isn't that vastly different. If someone went to Harvard Law, yes, they're very, very smart and they're great when it comes to test taking and retention. Are they better than someone, or do they know more graduating than someone who went to Stanford Law, even though Stanford's a good school as well? Probably not. They're probably all the same playing fields. Now, what they gain from that in practice, that's extremely important. But I would say if you have an attentive lawyer, if you have a lawyer who is, who understands a matter, has experience in a matter, and they're willing to work on your matter, and advocate for you zealously, I think that's super important, and that's what we try to bring to the table. There's some lawyers who are just inundated with business, and they're swamped and they're busy, and yes, they're very, very smart, but are they going to give your matter the attention it needs? Maybe, maybe not. So really putting parameters around the relationship is key. So.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. You spoke to this a little bit earlier when we were talking about how you wish some business owners out there might understand a little bit better about how just a lawyer's office works in general.
Mhm.
I'm curious about the system of billing and how that works. I think a lot of people probably who are especially new to the business world um, wonder about when they pick up the phone and they call someone like you. And they're like, "Hey, I need a lawyer," whatever. um, they wonder, am I going to get a bill for this 15-minute call that I just
That's
had?
hilarious. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I think it's a real fear. I think that, and I say fear. I mean, I don't know. People at certain stages don't worry about the money as much as but I'm talking about like people just getting started, young people out there who are trying to start their business and want to do it in the right way. Um, does that cause in your firm or just in firms in general, the initial phone call cause billing to start? How does that typically work? How does it work in your firm? Give us some context around that.
Certainly not. No. So typically we'll go through a process where we'll onboard with the client. First 15 minutes is free. And I hesitate to say this on a podcast, but a lot of times if clients call and there's a quick call, we're typically not billing for it. Typically can't hold that against me, clients.
Sure.
But if we're working on a matter, we're on a call for 30, 45 minutes, we're diving into a number of conversations, then yeah, we're going to bill for that. But I kind of use 15 minutes, 6 to 15 minutes as my benchmark. How long did it take? Our engagement agreement says we bill in 6 minute increments, but I try to let the time go past 6 minutes or sorry, 15 minutes before I start billing on something.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. As a CPA and being in the CPA world myself, I mean, there's definitely an awareness of how the billable hour works, and how time is kind of like historically at least has been the driver, I guess, of revenue for
Yeah.
firms. But I think I'm sensing in my own industry in the accounting world that there's some movement away from the billable hour being
Yeah.
that main driver and more of a monthly retainer system. Is there any kind of similar shift in the legal industry, or different pockets of the legal industry that operate differently in that regard?
Some law firms are moving towards more flat fees. We've tried it. For some matters that are easy to predict, that's fine. Some lawyers are also moving towards more of like a monthly retainer where you pay us $1,000 a month and you get X amount of hours. It's so hard to onboard clients that way, just because they're like, well, what if I don't use the full hour?
Right.
Well, that's the agreement. And so I think it's just clean to just do, however much time I spend on a matter, that's what we bill. So.
Got it. Got it. Um, well, there's this last question about your firm. Well, I guess I have a couple other questions, but this one you've asked a little, or you've answered a little bit already, but I want to ask about the young person out there who's thinking about starting a law firm specifically.
Mhm.
What steps would you recommend they take to position themselves well for that endeavor later in life?
Hmm. For a law firm specifically?
For a law firm specifically, yeah, maybe schooling, career path before, like that type of thing. Skills they need to develop.
Shake hands and kiss babies. do well in law school, try to learn as much as you can, which it's tough in law school because you don't know what you're going to practice. But
Sure.
your network is your net worth. Really, really grow your network. Really just try to know as many people as you can. I think that's important.
What have been, I mean, obviously, you were the king of cold interaction at one point in your career, and I'm sure that trait has continued to move you forward. And you've mentioned, your value for listening, your value for genuineness. That certainly comes through. What other networking tips would you give? In terms of like how you have done that, even moving to a new city in Charlotte, like you have.
Um, Consistency.
Hmm.
I think that's important. Showing up to the same places over and over and over. People have to know, like, and trust you. And so if they don't know you, they can't like or trust you. And
Yeah.
so, I when I started out, I just chose a few networking groups. I just went to them over and over and over. Now my networking has evolved a lot. Now it's less networking and more like hobbies. And so, really, I'm just into hobbies, and that's my form of networking these days. Cars, watches, golf. I just do that consistently, and then next thing you know, get to know people. Hey, I've got a matter. Can you handle this? Yeah. So
Wow. Yeah, that's neat. What does it take to be successful starting and running your own firm? I mean, other than what's been said already.
you gotta be able to tolerate the word no.
Hmm.
Hearing no hurts, adapt from it.
Hmm.
That's important to me.
Yeah.
I heard no a lot, and my dad, he again mentor. He has taught me a lot about compassion. It's not natural to me, so I've been on a life journey to try to learn compassion and be more compassionate. But when he told me, Sean, no, that hearing the word no hurts, it helped me internalize what that word means when I say it to people.
Hmm.
And it also helps internalize to me when I hear that word, yes, dang, that hurt. But on the back end, they may not have intended it that way. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yep.
So,
Yep.
um, so yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Okay. What is next as you look to a year from now, 5 years from now? What's the vision for Garrett PLLC, the legal firm you lead?
Continue making an impact in our community. So we're in 5 states: North, South Carolina, Georgia, Illinois, Missouri. Really, the 85 corridor, North, South Carolina, Georgia. Those are the 3 states that we make the most impact in. Just continuing to make an impact on the states that we operate in. I'm in Chicago actually pretty frequently too. So
Yeah.
got a lot of law school friends there. Just trying to do good legal work and make sure that the impacts that we make are felt. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, Shawn, it's truly been a pleasure to have you join the show. Thanks for giving us some insight into the legal world and insight into your own journey. There's a few stories that you shared that I have not heard before, and that will I'm sure stick with some people. So, yeah, thanks for your time, and I look forward to continuing to connect with you. So,
yeah, no, this was good. I appreciate it so much, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
until next time.